gentlemen, we are back. This is ATACS, episode number 23. We are adults. We are here to talk about cool stuff that generally revolves around video games and things of that particular nature. I'm your host, Paul from Atlanta, and joining me today on this beautiful October morning, Mr. Ryan from New York. How's it going, Ryan?
It is good. I got soaking wet this morning. I decided to go for a run in the cloudy, showery weather.
Yeah, so down here in Atlanta, there's a tropical storm moving through, so I woke up this morning, looked outside, and went, guess where I'm not going today? So it's been pretty rainy down here as well. But anyway, also, Mr. Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina. Hello, Flex.
Hello, Paul. I'm always wet.
That's a problem. They say after 4 hours, you should probably go see a doctor about that.
Okay, is that how that works?
The diagnosis is excessive moisture.
Chronic wetness.
Oh boy, that just sounds like a condition that no one ever wants to have. And
I live a fun life, Paul.
That's certainly an adjective that can be used to describe nouns. But anyway, that other voice that you heard over there was Mr. Will from Greenville, North Carolina. Hello, Will. Are you dry today?
I'm dry. Do you guys remember the commercial with the guy who's playing basketball and like every time he raises it, I think it's like a fake commercial, but like every time he raises his arms, it's like a fire extinguisher, it's like flies out of his, and then it's basically it's pretty hazardous if he doesn't have any deodorant.
Was that a Key and Peele skit? I feel like I've seen that.
It might have been. I can't remember.
Yeah, that was something that was in the pre-YouTube days. I feel like I saw that on like Comedy Central.
Yeah, probably.
So anyway, we're here for your entertainment, our international audience, to talk about only the best in video games, which is why Ryan is going to start us off with Stardew Valley, right, Ryan?
Maybe when I play that game, whenever I feel like I have 100 and something hours to just.
How are your dates with Haley going?
Yeah.
But you have not been playing Stardew Valley. You have been playing some other things, though.
Yes, and let me throw a curveball and kind of flip the script here. So actually, I spent this weekend at the New York Comic-Con.
That certainly counts as cool stuff.
That might be worth talking about.
Yeah.
This is actually probably my fourth year. I've been in New York for about 4 years now. I've been to every Comic-Con since, I guess. I usually just make a couple days, 2 or 3 days, depending on how things work out. This year wasn't my most exciting year. You know, I've kind of been through a lot of the, some things change, some things stay the same. I like to go for sometimes some of the panels. So this year I was able to catch a Voltron panel, which that's been one of my favorite animes recently. So it was fun to have like some of the producers and the voice actors like up on stage, like teasing the upcoming season 4. They showed some clips from that. And the voice actors were kind of like bantering and joking about the characters. So that was a cool experience.
Okay.
And then another panel I saw, for example, was like a figure company, a Japanese-based figure company called Banpresto, got together some hobby figure collectors in this like contest to make One Piece and DBZ figures, like new figures. And that's something I'm big into, is kind of the toys and figures scene. Okay. They had a contest and they had the award ceremony at Comic-Con, and the winner got like $10,000.
Were you the winner, Ryan?
Man, I am not crafty at all. But the figures looked really amazing, and they had the guy who voice acted Vegeta, Christopher Sabat, up on stage helping with the presentation and stuff. So it's a good time. Like I said, This wasn't my most exciting year. Like there weren't.
Did you cosplay?
I actually would like to cosplay, but again, going back to the I'm not crafty at all.
That might have
a lot of work, and even for like a simple costume, to not to just not go out and slap a t-shirt on and do something silly. So I haven't quite made that happen yet.
Okay. All right.
Um,
So, like, were you out there for? I mean, is it multiple days that you were out there for, or do you just go out once and then come back?
Yeah, they changed the format. They used to, up until this year, they would sell 3 and 4 day passes. So usually, the first year I could only get a Thursday pass and just went on a Thursday. But the other years, I was able to get either a 3 or a 4 day pass. And usually, I'd go for like maybe 3 days, like
Okay.
a few hours at a time. Because I'm not that hardcore, and it's a lot of so it's fun to pop in for a few panels, check out the show floor, and then head out and come back the next day. So this year, they only sold individual days, so I picked up a Friday and a Saturday.
Okay.
But yeah, it was still fun. Not my most exciting year. There weren't like a lot of new figures, and a lot of stuff felt familiar. But maybe next year there'll be some of the toy companies will have some really cool announcements, and you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, were you able just to pretty much hop on public transit from your apartment and go, or did you have to worry about parking or anything like that?
Yeah. I don't own a car. Living in
well, that kind of explains that.
So yeah, I took the the A train to Penn Station and then walked like 4 blocks.
That doesn't sound bad.
No, the transit was really easy from where I live. So yeah, that was the con. The only thing I have to talk about in video games, been playing a lot of odds and ends as usual, doing some stuff with Famicom Disk System, but not a lot to talk about there, other than the original Zelda is sometimes harder than I remember.
Indeed.
But I finished playing Hollow Knight, which we talked about last episode. Kind of an introduction. I guess it was a good time, and that game is really polished. And it does a lot of smart things, like a lot of modern gameplay and design decisions. I guess one of the things that I felt like in the last podcast that I definitely continued to feel throughout the game is that Hollow Knight is probably too big or too long for me for a 2D Metroidvania. It probably has a bit more of appeal to like genre people who are really into that genre.
Right.
So I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it didn't grab me at parts. I enjoyed it throughout, but there were definitely times where I felt kind of fatigued, or the backtracking wasn't enjoyable, or things like that. And there were other things as well, like some of the locks and keys I felt like were very obvious and familiar. So yeah, it was a really good game. It just, in some ways, it didn't sit for me. It wasn't as memorable to me maybe as like I remember when I played like in Super Metroid or Axiom Verge or another game in that genre. So
yeah, and as a self-professed not a huge fan of that genre, I'm probably not the person to facilitate this conversation. But Flex, you play a lot of these. Have you gotten into Hollow Knight very much?
Yeah, I beat it. I talked about it a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is absolutely, and I remember saying this when I talked about it, I don't know, whenever 2-3 episodes ago. Like this one is, Hollow Knight is definitely leans very heavily in the exploration side of things. So like it is that game.
Right.
And it is a big one of those games. Like Ryan's not wrong in that it is a bigger, longer one of those games.
Okay.
And like to me, that's what I really like about it, is that its world is that big and that dense, and there's a lot of stuff to explore in there. But if you're wanting like a lighter version of that or a shorter version of that, like that's not what Hollow Knight's going to be.
Okay.
I do think Hollow Knight, the thing for me that kind of set it apart from a lot of other games in that genre was like the combat, like the tight controls in the combat and like the bosses and a lot of that stuff. And I was curious, Ryan, did you enjoy that aspect of the game and like equipping the charms and like a lot of that kind of customization and combat stuff?
Yeah, there were parts of that I definitely appreciated. There were times I felt like the platforming was a little trolly. I felt like for such a exploration heavy game, like they like to do like the Ninja Gaiden bird things, type things like, oh, you're jumping over a pit. Let me spawn this flying enemy in front of you. But
they wouldn't infinispawn.
Not usually, no. They would spawn a lot of them though sometimes, and there was also the White Palace. I felt like was kind of a poor.
The White Palace is quite insane.
Yeah,
So I played around with my webcam and actually recorded my entire playthrough of Hollow Knight. And if you want to find me like entering a weird fugue state of tough platforming, like go find the part where I'm going through the White Palace, because I just like you'll see my eyes glaze over at some point.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, there were definitely parts of the combat I did like, and I like that they tried to make it challenging and throw in some platforming challenges. You know, not necessarily pulling their punches, but yeah, then they have some sections where it definitely felt like they were being a little trolly. And like, for example, the double jump, whenever you trigger your second jump, your character continues to float down for a little bit. So stuff like that made it feel like
it's a different timing.
They were trying to put tight platforming in a game that wasn't completely designed for tight platforming. So there was a few of those things that, you know, nitpicking, I feel like didn't always fit that well.
I actually really enjoyed the platforming. I thought it controlled really tightly. The double jump has a different timing to it, but once you learn that timing, I thought it worked. The White Palace was the one part where I was just like, all right, this is getting a little excessive, guys. But other than the White Palace, I actually really enjoyed the platforming, and I really enjoyed that it did have a lot of tight platforming and tight combat in addition to the exploration, which is still definitely the game's biggest focus. And with the trolley stuff, I never actually found it that trolly. A lot of that stuff to me reminded me more of the ways that Dark Souls makes you pay attention to your surroundings. Whereas if you just try and run through, like something silly is going to knock you down. That's how that stuff stuck out to me. But that was my impression.
Yeah, I guess part of the reason I bring it up is just because, you know, when you're exploring a new area, you haven't found a bench, maybe you're off on a different path. It's like you get to this point, like, for example, Deep Nest, I felt like was a good example of this. It's like, okay, here's a bunch of pits with spikes. All right, I'm going to jump halfway over this pit. Okay, here's the spider that's going to attack me. Let me kill it. All right, let me jump forward. All right, here we go again. Like, here's another pit. Where's the spider? Okay, this one doesn't have one. Like, and then when you have to backtrack, you know, and you're just really trying to push through those areas, like, it can be really irritating to have that stuff kind of come back. So yeah, I mean, it's nitpicky stuff, but I do remember being a little irked every now and then by stuff like that. Anywho,
right. So how completionist were you? I mean, you mentioned the phrase White Palace, so I assume you got the true ending.
How
much of the game did you do?
I ended up at 90%, 26 hours.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I didn't go out of my way to do everything, but you know, when I was exploring an area, I would try to be pretty thorough. And you know, I didn't look up a whole lot, but I kind of got a sense of like, okay, you know, you want to focus on certain elements of the gameplay to unlock certain things. So,
nice. What did you say your time was? Sorry,
I think it was like 26 hours.
Okay, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So, that was just a PC only release, right? That didn't come out for the consoles, or did it?
Correct.
Okay.
I think a Nintendo Switch version is in the works. I could be wrong on that, but I believe for now it's Steam only.
Okay. All right. So, can you play keyboard and mouse, or do you have to use a controller?
I think you can play keyboards and mouse, but I would highly advise against doing so.
Yeah, every time you load the game, a splash screen comes up that says, use of a controller is highly recommended.
Okay.
And then when you press load game, it moves the cursor to whatever your mouse is hovering over, which is incredibly annoying.
That's funny.
Oh, Ryan, when you beat the game, did it crash to desktop?
No, mine did not.
Okay, well, hopefully they patched that since I played it, because I got all 3 endings, and each time I beat the game, it crashed to desktop.
That's really funny. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
I mean, it was fine. You're done with the game, but
moving a little past Hollow Knight, you said you've been playing some other stuff, Ryan, or was that the only thing?
That was a big thing.
Okay.
Odds and ends, but nothing I think really worth talking about today.
Okay. Mr. Flex, what's been going on over in your corner of the woods? I'm going to guess it starts with a P and ends with an Ursona 5.
so it's been. I missed the last episode for the first time. I missed an episode, but now I'm back.
You're back.
Who wants to talk about Persona?
I want to talk about Persona. As we see,
tell me about being a shapeshifter.
I'm a shapeshifter.
At Pose Masquerade. Anyway, so go ahead. You said you've been. You're obviously not done with it, right?
No, I'm not done with it. I actually, if you had talked to me, let's say 48 hours ago, my progress would have been barely unchanged. But both the past 2 days, between the past 2 days, I've went to a Persona Frenzy and probably put in a good 10 hours or so.
Jeez, what's your playtime right now?
It's like 78-ish hours, somewhere in that ballpark.
All right, I'm at 76, but probably about 2 or 3 of those hours for me are idle time, so it's a little bit.
I would guess at least a couple for me are idle time, so we may be about the same spot. I am just about to go into the 6th palace.
Going into the 6th palace. All right, so I'm trying to count. I think I'm at the end of that palace.
Okay, so you're actually probably a little ahead of me then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the palace that's a casino.
Yep. I am at the end of that one. I actually got to the part of the game where you go in and you fight the boss, and I'm like, well, it's 11 o'clock at night. I know this is probably going to be a big fight followed on like a big cinematic and things. So that's where I am, and as soon as we get done talking today, that's where I will be going, is to go and do that.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that at the very beginning of the game, it sort of frames you. It's like a story within a story where you're flashing back through the majority of the game, and this is the part where you're just about to catch up with current events, basically.
Because the opening of the game is you escaping a casino, getting caught. This is like literally the first half hour of the game. You're escaping a casino, you get caught, and you're being interrogated by this woman, and throughout the entire game it flashes back to you in this interrogation room, and she's like, so this happened next? And you're like, yes, this is what happened.
Yep.
So when I got to this palace and it's a casino, I'm like, all right, this is probably where we're going to catch up.
Yeah, and so far as I know, because I actually don't know a ton about the story as it ends. This is about the spot where when Steph was playing through that I went to work one day and she just beat the rest of the game in one day.
Right.
So I know that given that this is one of those games, there's probably going to be some plot twists coming up soon, and there's probably going to be more dungeons than what you think there's going to be, because that's the way all of these games work. So now this is getting into the fun part. I'm kind of feeling.
Yeah, because the casino is the 6th palace, and I believe Nate said, depending on how you count it, there's either 7 or 8. So
right,
you're getting down to it a little bit. But yeah, I'm sure I'm fully expecting some plot twists. What day are you on in the calendar? I think I'm like November 2nd or 3rd or something.
I'm like, so I don't know the exact date, but they give you so many days to clear each palace. Yeah. And I'm at the very last day. So like the 18th. So
you're probably like
20th.
mid-November.
Yeah, I think it's closer to the end, but okay. Yeah. And so I'm right there, and this like this is the very last day on the calendar to walk in and beat the boss and not fail the game, basically.
I'm probably gonna wait because I'm early November. I'm probably also gonna wait a week or two in game before going into the palace. It generally seems to be helpful to like buff up your social links and all that other stuff before going into a palace.
Yeah, I never do that. It's like, hey, palace, run in there, smash it. All right, now I have like a whole month just to do whatever. That one didn't quite work out that way.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, the game's been going pretty steady clip. I'm starting to max out some social links and like definitely like starting to see the quote unquote light at the end. Or I guess I feel like I'm probably about to start entering that end game like we were talking about. One thing that as the game's gone that's kind of struck me compared to the previous Persona games is your party members, like their activities in Persona 5 are much more in like the public eye than they have been in Personas 3 and 4.
Right.
Like Personas 3 and 4, you were just kind of doing your own thing. Like you were in the dark hour, you were in the TV world, kind of doing your thing, and it never seemed to like catch on in wider society. But Persona 5 has like a much more like broader impact that people actively talk about your group, like on social forums and stuff. And like when you're just walking around town,
it makes sense.
And that's become more and more prevalent as the game's gone on, which is kind of interesting to see like that twist on it.
Yeah. And that's why I say it's like, I can feel a plot twist coming. I don't know what it is. I can just feel it. So I'm just waiting to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah. And I have some guesses on some of those plot twists, but I obviously won't make them here for spoilery reasons. But
yeah, I have some guesses as well, but
and I could be totally wrong.
I mean, in the end, the only thing that's going to happen is my giantly overpowered party is going to smash whatever's put in front of it, really, because I've officially reached that point of the game where everyone has an SP patch. I don't have any issues with anything, and it's like, oh, look, that guy's cute. I'm going to murder him now. So, yeah. and I kind of got, going back to Persona 4, this is about the same time gameplay-wise that happened in Persona 4, so it's kind of interesting how those games almost get easier over time.
Yeah, in some ways they can. Yeah, the Fifth Palace I did entirely in one sitting and in one day, in-game day, so it was like I just kind of breezed through it pretty quickly. Yep. I don't know if this Sixth Palace will go the same way or not, but yeah, you definitely like, especially it probably depends a lot of if you're actually keeping up with your social links and all and your mementos requests and all that stuff. But like if you do keep up with that stuff, then yeah, you can get pretty powerful.
Yeah. So anyway, that was our Persona Minute. So you have you been playing anything else?
I have a question for Ryan though.
Right.
Ryan was here last weekend and he saw some Persona. So I guess like, after hearing us talk about Persona for so long, like, what did you think actually seeing it in action for a little bit?
I mean, I don't know that I'll be picking it up anytime soon, but I have a better sense of why people kind of gush about that game. Just seeing it, like, it has it has tons of polish, like, it has a very, like, distinct anime style, like, and even jumping into the menus, you get all this kind of like flashy anime action, cool soundtrack, like lots of interesting characters. And you have this mix of like all these different systems of this, like, almost like, I don't know if dating sim is the right word, but like this kind of simulation, this like social sim on top of like an RPG layer, on top of like maybe even like some sort of monster pet management system. So like,
oh yeah,
I can see like with all that polish and with the charming characters and stuff. And I played Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which is not quite the same, but the character writing and like the really good art style and like the voice acting and stuff like that, definitely, that game just kind of gushed with style, and it was a lot of fun to play. Probably more because of the style than the actual gameplay, but
yeah, it is super stylish. It's, as you were talking, I was thinking like Persona 5 probably has the most flashiest like anime menus ever.
Yeah, so I can just seeing it, I was like, okay, I kind of get like, it's hard why this game is hard to describe and why people sit here and play it for like 100 hours or whatever.
What was our game of the year category for? Is like best style or flashiest? I think
it was just best looking game is what we called it.
Okay, I mean this game definitely is one of the few games that I've ever sat down and just been like, holy crap! Every single thing of this just looks amazing, and it's not like technically amazing like Uncharted or something like that, but it's just so artful, and it does.
Yeah,
such
it's
a good
all
job.
art and animation.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and lots of detail, lots of polish. Like you can tell, even me as just a casual observer, like just flipping through menus and things like that, you can just see kind of the attention they've put in a lot of little things.
And even stuff like when you win a battle and like the experience screen like has your characters like running as like all of these numbers like flash and pop up in elaborate ways. It's just across the board, that game's just oozing with it.
yeah, it's pretty stylish. I can see why it spent 47 years in development.
Yeah. But yeah, other than Persona, the only other game I have to talk about is Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which I have completed.
XCOM Mario Edition.
Mm-hmm.
How much more of that did you do since we looked at it?
None.
Okay. So you beat it whenever I was hanging out, and then that was kind of it. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, Ryan was here when I beat the final boss. And it's still possible I may go back and do some of the bonus stuff. So like each world has a bonus mission and some bonus challenges and some collectibles and all that stuff. But I may just be done with the game. I don't know. I have no explicit plans one way or the other right now. But yeah, I did officially beat the final boss, saw the credits roll, all that good stuff. I mean, overall, I enjoyed the game. I think it was like maybe a little long for how light it is. Like it is very much an XCOM light, if you want to word it that way.
Yeah.
So like I think I would have enjoyed that game better. Like I probably played it. So I think the Switch tells me I have played it 25 hours or more. So count that how you will. But I think I would have enjoyed it better if it had somehow shaved off like a good 5-10 or so hours off of it and made it like a quicker ramp, because like the progression they have is not necessarily bad for your characters. Like the abilities you get and stuff from going through the skill tree, and also the progression of the enemies and like the challenge ramp. All of that stuff is not necessarily bad. It all feels a little slow. So it almost feels like they could have chopped the game down to like 2/3 or even a half and just made the ramp a little quicker. And I felt like it could have been a tighter experience.
Okay.
But like, I mean, overall, I think it is they have good mechanics in there and they have like good, interesting systems that are fun to engage with. It just, I don't know, it never quite gelled 100% how I wanted it to. It almost feels like they could have cut out at least one entire world from the game, because there were 4 worlds. And the first 2 were very easy. It wasn't really until the 3rd world that it started getting kind of challenging. And then the 4th world was like appropriately tough. It's like still not super challenging, like still not super hard. But like they got to a good point by the end. I just wish they had gotten there quicker. Is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I feel like that's been a lot of the chatter that I've heard around that game is it's better than it has any right to be, yet it still somehow feels a little bit too long.
Yeah.
So, and it's also one of those games where it's like, I'm 99% sure that I'm never going to pick that one up and play it, just because I've got so much other stuff that's sort of risen above that one. And I feel like that for a lot of the folks that have picked it up and played it, I don't really hear anyone necessarily like regretting it too much. It's just more like one of those where it started out, kind of strong and also surprising, and then it was like you're ready to be done with it by the end, which sounds kind of like what you're feeling too.
Yeah, and to be clear, yeah, I did enjoy the game and I don't regret playing it at all. But yeah, there's a certain amount of, I guess, repetition to it that over the course of the 25-30 hours that it takes to go through the main campaign, that it's hard not to feel like you've played through some fat that could have been trimmed.
Gotcha.
And it could have been just the progression could have been streamlined a little more, I think.
Okay.
I mean, speaking of style, how about that opera phantom?
Oh yeah. So minor spoiler, not really spoilery, but the boss of World 3, if anyone wants to see a fun video, just go look up on YouTube the like introduction to the World 3 boss of that game. He has the dumbest, most insane song that he sings. It's like this ghost that's like on a stage singing opera style, and the song he sings is just like as many Mario references as they could possibly conjure up, strung together in a way that makes no coherent sense. It's like they just wanted to make as many references as possible. It's a really stupid song.
I look forward to watching that as soon as we get off of this podcast. Right, number one. Yeah.
I guess final comment is I think the coolest thing about the game is the movement stuff it introduces, which I've probably talked about before, but the way you're able to slide tackle through enemies and bounce off your allies, and then certain characters can jump on enemies, or some characters have ground pounds or other things. Like, there's a lot of movement options in this game that games of this type I've not seen do quite like that before. So that was a really interesting twist of each character's turn. It feels like you can do a lot through the movement options, and that was really interesting and fun to puzzle together, I found.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thing from this game that I would like to see like revisited in some other form that I thought was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, like, I had a chance to see the game, which I was glad to see it. Like, I think it's a game I'm going to end up not picking up because I was on the fence. You know, like we talked about, the community reaction has been generally positive, but not like overwhelmingly so. And one thing that was interesting to see is the game does introduce some cool movement mechanics, but one thing I also saw, because Flex and I played some co-op missions kind of probably mid to late game, so I got to skip some of the slow ramp up progression. And the mechanics themselves were interesting, but the missions themselves didn't feel like necessarily balanced or varied I guess. Like, it felt like with your team members, there were 3 to 4 characters that really were consistently strong, and you might have characters like Luigi who have interesting things as a sniper, but he's got low HP and he doesn't have good movement attacks, and if your characters don't have good movement attacks, then like they're not going to be as useful.
And that's a really good point, because the game does bank so much on movement that when like Luigi doesn't have those movement options, he just feels weaker.
Yeah, so it felt like maybe the game didn't have as much variety versus like a game like XCOM where all your soldiers feel potentially useful, and the game is constantly forcing you to rotate your teams anyway, so you're having to find creative ways. Or, you know, a game like Fire Emblem where they might have some really interesting, challenging maps with different types of enemies, like those more fleshed out turn-based strategy games.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They could have used more variety in the maps and scenarios. And talking about balance, freaking Rabbid Luigi is a monster. He is unstoppable. Like, he is simultaneously your best tank, your best DPS, and your best healer.
I don't see the problem here.
Yeah, he's just... So you use 3 characters every battle. You have to use Mario. There's no reason to ever not use Rabbid Luigi, so like 2 of my 3 were locked in every fight. Rabbid Luigi is incredible.
Well, I mean, at least they gave Luigi the spotlight somewhere, but they just still couldn't quite get it right.
Yeah, they couldn't make it him personally, of course.
Yeah, it feels strangely appropriate that, regular Luigi still does not get any spotlight, but they like subvert it via Rabbid Luigi.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Have you been playing anything else, Flex?
Nope, it's basically just been Rabbids and Persona. So that's what I got.
Will, you've been a trooper over there, bud.
You talking to me?
I'm talking to you, bud.
Okay, you said well, WELL, and I was like, well, let's go and see what we can find in the well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very deep well full of very interesting games that I've never heard of before.
Paul's dropping the bucket in.
And let's see what comes out of the well. What you got, Will?
Well, let's see. Somebody said they wanted to hear about Destiny raids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
did you beat it?
I'm sure no other podcast has talked about Destiny raids.
None.
I mean, none that are as good as this one.
None no other William has talked about Destiny raids on a podcast.
I'm sure that's accurate.
Yeah. Well, no, probably not. No other tall William from North Carolina. I don't know how specific I need to be before.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're working on it. So we have beaten me and Assorted Crew the first 3 parts of the raid.
All right.
How many parts are there?
There are 4. There is a boss battle at the end.
So you've made it to the boss?
Yes, we have made it to the boss.
How's that boss looking?
He looks like a big elephant with like a grape juice cup. And I mean,
I like grape juice.
I'm kind of mostly serious. I mean, look this dude up. His name is Callus. So
All right.
it's you know, I guess it's just one of these things that I kind of hate, but feel pressure to do because it takes 6 people to do it. And some of my friends are really into it, and they really want to do it. And so I'm like, I guess if you guys get 5 people and you can't get a 6th because I own the game, I'll get in there and try and help. And there's a lot about it I don't like. Very little that I do like.
Did you play any of the Destiny 1 raids?
I did, and didn't really like those that much either.
Yeah. Is this feel similar to you to those in terms of like what you do and don't like?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for the most part, I mean, the first and most irritating thing is that you know, to me, these raids occupy the same space, and of course, not everybody's going to get this reference, but they occupy the same space as like the zombie modes in Call of Duty games.
Yeah.
I guess have you guys played any of the zombie modes?
Yeah,
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so the thing with those zombie modes is like they would just throw you in there, and they would say, "Okay, here comes a wave." But the thing is, there were actually like objectives and things you needed to do. Like, you know, in one that I was playing, it's like you needed to get a fan piece so you could build some contraption to open a door. And for some people, they really like this sort of, I guess, like community sourced direction. You know, it's almost like, you know, as people get it, certain people love to just get in there and see what are we supposed to do, you know? So it's like grabbing these items, and I don't know. Of course,
are you talking about like a horde mode, like something
No.
like a Gears 4?
It's not quite a horde mode. Like you don't necessarily. There's some other kind of progression to it, but I guess most of us probably played, at least tried the raids, and have heard this. So I don't know that I really need this comparison, but basically, Destiny raids, the way they work is you just get in there and there's no direction at all. And either you sit there for hours and hours and hours and hours and piece together what to do, or you get on YouTube, which is pretty much the way that it's been every time I've ever played one. And so one of us, typically the one who wants to beat the raid the baddest, will go on and watch YouTube videos of everything that happens, and then come back and relay to us the information. But it's always like, you know, there are always like holes in the information, or, you know, maybe there will be a part that they didn't cover, or the person will have only watched half the video or something. And then we'll get to a new part.
Proper due diligence.
You know, and the thing is, like, you know, then when you go to, and then you lose this part of the raid, you have to start from the beginning. Of course, there are no checkpoints. And so, you know, you have to fight through some other annoying garbage before you can actually get to the part of the raid that you haven't beaten yet. So that to me, and the rules are always very unclear. You know, there are time limits to do certain things, but you don't really know quite what they are and what triggers them, because you're given no information at all about how to do this thing. You know, it's just sort of like a mishmash of crowdsourced garbage. I'm sounding really negative, and I kind of am. I kind of am on this thing. I think these things are so incredibly overrated. Like,
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the Destiny 1 raids, I played the first 2, and I remember mostly enjoying them. I mean, a lot of times I was with somebody who knew enough of the raid that
And
I don't think I would want to slosh it out myself unless I just had tons and tons of free time. But
yeah, and that was the funny thing is that the first time they were going to play it, one of my friends sent a message on the text chain being like, "Guys, let's go in blind," and I did not participate in that. And then, like the next day, I got an email on the text or another message on the text chain that was like, "All right, guys, I'm going to go watch the videos." So yeah, I thought so. Got to go watch those videos, figure this garbage out. But I think the other thing is just a personal thing. Like for me, like when I do co-op gaming, I kind of like to pick one person. And then I feel like I can sort of just, I guess, communicate with that person well. I have a specific way I typically kind of, not to say that I'm a social chameleon or something, but to me, it's just easier to coordinate and cooperate with just kind of one person, and it's less messy,
Right.
And there are times in the Destiny 2 raid where one of the suggestions, I shit you not, when you read the things online, it's like you want to pick people with very distinct voices to do this because you're going to need to call out different things. And so there's one where it's like there are two people who are doing one task, and then there are two people who are doing another task, and then two people doing a third task. And they said, well, the two people who are going to be your quote unquote runners need to have the most distinct voices possible so that you can actually figure out who's who. And then there's another part of the raid, actually the ending where you're fighting the boss, that requires the same thing. It also requires like you to kind of figure out who has said what. And it's just always a mess to me. It's miraculous that we beat anything.
Yeah, it does sound like quite a feat of like coordination and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and
it seems like it almost sounds to me, and I remember thinking this when hearing of like Destiny 1 raids, it almost sounds to me more of a feat of like, just like coordinating amongst the 6 people and like deciphering however you end up deciphering what to do. It's just like figuring out what to do and then somehow coordinating among your people in a way that like maybe voice chat is not necessarily great for coordinating that stuff.
Yeah.
So it almost seems like this magical feat of coordination than anything else.
Yeah, and here's another bonus, and this is the last thing I'll say about the Destiny 2 raids. So after you beat a section, you're dropped a key, all right? And one of them's like key of aqueduct, another one's like key of turbine or something. And there is this little to open the chest to actually get your rewards for doing these things. You go down and do this 6-digit code where each one of you stands in front of a lever that's like kind of not really even labeled, but it's like 1 to 6. And of course, so someone had to figure out which one was 1 and which one was 6 because that's Destiny. And you get the code, and then you input the code to open up this chamber, and then it's like this Byzantine network of tunnels and channels and fans and platforming. And depending on which key you have to platform your way to that specific chest. And sometimes there's actually little combat challenges that you have to do. So you don't even get your goodies immediately. You have to go figure out where the chest is that goes with whatever key you have, how to beat the actual challenge so you can actually get in there and get your goodies. And it's funny because on multiple occasions, people who were trying to get the chest with me have gotten so frustrated with the process that they just quit because they keep failing the platforming over and over.
Wait, just quit the raid entirely?
Well, this is a separate thing. You can go get the chest separately from trying to fight the raid. So it's almost like, and you don't necessarily need everybody there to get these chests. They're not like teamwork coordinating, but they are like hard combat challenges and platforming challenges that kind of require some thought and skill. And so the last time we played, 2 of us quit. Like they started trying to get the chest and just quit. And we're like, I'll try it later in the week or something.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, to me, it's certain. I'm sure it appeals to somebody.
Well,
and I have a few related questions on that. Like, I mean, obviously, you're just loving the raid so much. What the rest of your group is like? Is everyone else like genuinely excited, or is it turned into this thing of like they just feel like they need to complete it because they've invested so much, or like I guess what is keeping people playing it at this point? I think
it's a little bit of a lot of things. I mean, for one, I think different people find it it neat that Bungie is experimenting with different modes of combat. So, for instance, like one of them is like a I think I might have mentioned this in the last podcast. It's like a race, and so one of you is running, one of you is standing on this activator pad, the other one is meleeing these little dudes who come out, and so it's sort of, and you have to coordinate, which one of these arrows you need to shoot to open up the correct door so that somebody can go through it. And I think that's just very different than anything else you do in Destiny. There's also a stealth section where you're trying to dodge these dogs and build up this damage multiplier so you can then kill the dogs before they howl too much or some crap like that. My understanding is gleaned from bits and snippets of YouTube and friends talking to me. I mean, we've beat this section, but I still don't quite know exactly how and why everything is happening.
Well, and let me maybe I should jump in defense of the Destiny 1 raids.
But one second.
Uh-huh.
So the other thing is that these particular sections, I mean, although they're different than the core shooting, they're worse than the core shooting. Like the stealth section.
That's what I was going to ask. Is people seem to love Destiny for the shooting, and the raids seem to be about almost everything but the shooting.
Right. And so that's one thing. But I also think, and this is the last thing I'll say about the raids, Ryan, I'll let you get in, is that I think other people have a better sense of accomplishment when they finish this thing. And this is sort of a recurring thing with me in general. Like, I don't feel like I respond to difficulty quite the same way as other people do. So when I finish it, I'm like, well, crap, I wish we would have known from the beginning what we know now. And I think some of the other people, when we finish these sections, they're like, they get this real like rush, like, oh yeah, come on. Yeah, we did it, squad. And I don't feel it. I don't know. I guess I'm emotionally broken inside.
Well, aren't we all?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So, but yeah, that's it. That's what I have to say about that. Ryan, I'll let you go ahead and get in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just wanting to jump in defense. So I played, I think, the first 2 Destiny 1 raids. And I mean, I do remember liking it. Like, for one thing, they're different. Like, that game is a lot about repeating the same content. And it's nice to see them, put in these gameplay modes that, and not every section of the raid is good. Like, I remember platforming in the Vault of Glass. Like, it wasn't super hard, but it's like, it's kind of neat that they're like, okay, to get this loot, now we're actually going to have to jump across this platforming segment, and maybe you can take advantage of some class abilities, and like you have to work through some timing. Like, it could be frustrating, but it was kind of neat that they were experimenting with that. And then the actual, they had a lot of cool like mechanics. So I remember like one section in the Vault of Glass, you needed to split your team of 6 into 3 groups of 2 and defend these 3 points from like these basically suicide enemies. So you have all these enemies kind of horde spawning in, and like people are having to call out and, pick off like, these special enemies that would come in and try and, defeat your objective. Or like in the Crota raid, like, you're basically going into this like really dark, scary area. And then the first section, you're having to run like between these light points with basically like all these, they're almost like, I don't know, flood or zombies or something. They're all these little like melee enemies spawning everywhere. So that creates this like, it creates this dynamic where you can still shoot, and there is sometimes an advantage, but if you just sit there and try to shoot infinitely, you're just going to get overwhelmed. So it creates this like dynamic of like, who gets lost? Can the team stick together? Like, you might have some hero moments where a person's able to kind of get to the end and complete the scenario. Like it created, I felt like, some good, some bad, but it required coordination. Like there were actually mechanics you had to think about. Like it wasn't just like kind of dumbly shooting, space aliens helmets off and watching.
And I'm not saying that people who like this are bad people. I'm just saying it doesn't really work.
I thought that's what you were saying.
It just doesn't work for me specifically. And then, Ryan, you said there's, Destiny's a lot about receiving the same content, and we had to repeat the raid over and over and over again to get these armor pieces so we could get our light level.
That's a question. That's a question I would have. So, I mean, is the raid, because I do remember having to redo the raid a few times to get loot. in the first Destiny. Do you still have to do that, or do they just make it bigger and give you more loot? Like,
I don't. I guess I needed to do more research on it.
It sounds
I
like
don't
it's
know.
bigger and harder. Like the first Destiny 2 raid is just kind of bigger and harder than the other Destiny 1 raids. Is that?
From what I'm understanding, well, it is more challenging. But from what I'm understanding, it's like there are milestones that you do. And these milestones, some of the rewards for them are called like powerful gear. And there's a certain phrase, I think it's powerful gear. And whenever you turn in a milestone, you have basically you get quote unquote powerful gear. And that powerful gear is always based on your current light level. So there's a higher chance that you're going to get something that can actually benefit you. I don't remember. I don't think in this part that there are specific pieces that you're looking for from the raid necessarily. I think the raid can give you multiple opportunities to get quote unquote powerful gear. But I don't think that there are specific pieces that you're trying to get to like drop, and the raid is the only way you're going to get them.
Okay. Yeah. So there's still an advantage, but it's not like you're not going in there to get Praetus Revenge. Running it 20 times or whatever.
There you go.
How long does a run take of this raid? Like when the times you've gotten to the boss, like how long has that run been?
Well, the first time I did it, we beat one section. The second time I did it, the section we started on, we lost over and over again for like 2 hours. Then the third time I tried it, we beat all 3 of the sections. And that probably, so a lot of it, of course, is just getting everybody coordinated.
Right.
And so I guess if you were to do it accurately, you could probably do the whole thing, I'd say, in like an hour and a half, maybe.
Right.
But
how long do you think you
that's
spent
kind
on
of
it?
consistent with past raids.
How long have I spent all together?
Yeah, all together.
On the raid, I'd say 4.5 hours, maybe.
Okay, that's not
maybe 5. I don't know, something
that's
like
not
that.
as high as I would have guessed.
Yeah.
I know Giant Bomb did the raid a week or two ago, and they spent I think like 20 hours or something total before they beat it.
Yeah. Did they try to piece it out, or did they YouTube?
Yeah, I don't think they looked anything up. I think they pieced it out on their own.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, so that's all the Destiny that I
okay,
think I
sorry.
handle.
One last Destiny question.
Oh God, this better be the last one. We've been talking about this
I promise.
forever.
All right.
So it's funny. I initiated Destiny talk with 3 questions in mind, and I have not gotten around to them yet. Somehow.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. How are you feeling about Destiny 2 in general in terms of like expansions and stuff? Like, how likely do you think you are to buy more expansions and do more stuff in Destiny 2?
Oh, I just printed out my Amazon return label for Destiny 2.
Oh, okay. Well, that answers that question.
So, not very likely.
All right. Yeah, I was curious about that. So, that's a pretty definitive answer. Yeah.
But I will say that I didn't have a bad time with what I played. Okay. I just sort of said, this is kind of the experience I'm looking to get from it. I'm looking to just have a co-op game to play with my friends, to see all the content one time, and then I'm good. And I wasn't interested in doing the raid from the get-go. That wasn't something that I was like, oh, man, we'll see. Like I kind of knew what it was about, but I did want to help out my buds. But yeah. Question 2.
All right. No, that was my final one.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Awesome.
All right.
So, Destiny. That's it's really funny. I feel like everyone buys that game and then no one likes it, yet it sells incredible. Because I know I got Destiny. Well, I didn't buy Destiny 1. Someone gave me Destiny 1 as a gift, and then they gave me Destiny the Taken King as a gift. I played through all the story missions, and I played through some of the raid for the Taken King, and I went, I like the shooting. I'm never playing this again, though. This is great. And then I've not picked up Destiny 2 and do not plan on it.
Well, I will say that I think my opinion's a minority of the people that I play with. But for better or for worse.
So has it been pretty much all Destiny all the time, or do you have a?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, thank God.
But it has been all one game all the time, but it just hasn't been Destiny. It's been Fallout 4.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and that game when it came out, it got the reception was not as good as like 3 or New Vegas.
Yeah.
But I think I just have a weakness for bathroom scrounging. Because
post-apocalyptic bathroom scrounging, that's definitely
like
your game type.
when you're not playing cooperatively with one person, you're just in a bathroom.
that's kind of like what my real life is like. So it really, I just adore these things. Like, it really is, and I guess I kind of knew it a little bit, because even though, my friend Tim played it and he was like, "Oh, you're going to be so disappointed." I haven't been. I mean, there are some things that I don't like. I think the Radiant quests are lazy. Like, basically, there are these groups of quests where you can ask somebody and they're like, "Hey, you need to go clear this out, and we'll give you some reward for it." And it just picks a random location on the map. And there are like 30 different locations it can pick. I think the perks are by and large a repeat from Fallout 3. Now they're really good perks. I mean, they allow for
I remember liking the perks.
They allow for a number of builds, but they are pretty much the exact same. I also the music. I always really like the music in these games, and they repeat a whole lot of music from Fallout 3, which I don't know how many. I mean, it's not like they can create more songs from the 50s. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I don't know if
maybe they can't.
But I mean, there are a couple new ones. My favorite one is 60 Minute Man. So if anyone wants to look up a song from the 50s called 60 Minute Man, it's fantastic.
I mean, Grandma plays the numbers, right?
That's a fantastic one too. So and that one is also new. But I think, of course, I love creating, the whole creating my build, going into the perk system, figuring out what I want to go for, what type of weapons I want to get, what type of armor I want to get. But I think more than anything, what I like to do is just kind of pick a direction on the map, whether there's like a magazine or a bobblehead or a quest in that direction, and then just kind of explore whatever I come to. So sometimes it's like an energy plant, sometimes it's like a store, sometimes it's a comic book shop, sometimes it's a library. I mean, there are a wrecked ship. There are hundreds of things that you can come to, and I can't imagine the care that has been taken to kind of create individual stories, So just, this will be the last thing I say about Fallout, because I did talk a lot about Destiny, but just to give an example, and this is just a random thing, but so there was an office space that has now been turned into like a base of operations for a military faction. And you go in there and, you're trying to take out these different guys from the military faction. Up on the second floor, there's like a little cubicle office space where there's a line of cubicles, and then there's a corner, and then there's another one of these cubicles. There are 3 terminals there that are still kind of in working order. So I looked at one of the terminals, and it's this guy complaining that there's this intern who's like from Russia or something named Boris, and he thinks Boris smells really, really bad. And he actually has a little journal on his computer where he basically says, "Look, Boris, I know you can read this. You smell really bad because you're always looking over my shoulder and looking at my screen." And then you move over to Boris's computer, and he's like, "Yes, of course I saw that because I'm always looking at this guy's screen, but it's not me. I don't smell that bad." And then you like go over to the other side of the room, and there's another cubicle against the wall, and you look at and you go onto that one and read the journals and stuff. And the guy's like, "I put my old lunch in this dude's desk, and he keeps blaming the intern for it because he thinks the intern smells really terrible." And like, I started cracking up, but like, there's care put in like that in most of the places in the game. Like, most of the places you go, if you like dig around, there's something fishy or weird or funny happening. Like, the vaults to me are the quintessential thing, because basically the vaults are created as a place for people to go and hide after this nuclear war. But the company, seeing basically an opportunity to do some controlled research, there's always an ulterior motive associated with each vault. So maybe one vault is secretly doing some sort of genetic modification, or another one is secretly testing the transmission of like a certain type of disease. And everywhere you go, there's like a little story that you can kind of piece together. And so I just love spending time in this world, listening to 50s music, figuring out what happened in all these crazy places prior to the war. But yeah, it really does it for me. I'm a big Fallout fan.
Yeah, and a lot of that storytelling, like you're talking about, like all that care. I feel like that if you go, you see a lot of that in Skyrim as well. Because you walk into like a cave in Skyrim, and then you'll find like a skeleton who's been crushed by a rock, who's reaching for a healing potion that you can just like grab.
Right. Yeah.
And like there's no actual like story that's explicitly being told, but just all of the little implicit stories that are told by the surroundings, like whenever you start looking for them, are pretty cool, and it just goes to show like how many people were spending how many hours to make various parts of that world not feel like it's procedurally generated.
Yeah.
So.
But suffice it to say, I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, I remember when we did our talk at the end of that year. Like the thing I took away from Fallout 4 is like it definitely has those like good touches and moments that the Bethesda games have. But I felt like it didn't do much more than that. And it sounds like for you, like that's what you want. Like that's like having that again is like totally up your alley.
Because I don't really play any other games much that do that. I mean, Horizon did it to a certain extent, sort of, maybe a little bit.
Maybe.
But at the same time, I think Fallout and Bethesda do it very well. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I haven't done as much story, so it could be that, but what I've done I thought was pretty interesting. But I haven't really done that much because I spent so much time wandering into old appliance stores.
And people were harsh on, I mean, I didn't like Fallout 3, but I know people were kind of harsh on Fallout 4. I mean, did they also kind of have some regression in UI? Like I heard your companion big watch thing was really ugly. Like the interface was really ugly. Like
you talking the Pip-Boy interface?
Pip-Boy, yeah. Was there any of that? Because I mean, I got the impression that Fallout 4 kind of regressed, but it sounds like maybe what people didn't like was that they just copy pasted this big chunky Fallout 3.
Most of the understanding most of the disappointment from what I understood, and this was my disappointment as well, is that it didn't feel like it did anything new. It felt like it was doing their template again. My experience was also a little buggier than I had experienced before.
Yeah, and it could be that I'm playing it like 2 years after release. That I haven't really run into any real bugs.
Yeah,
that's good.
Which maybe is a good just rule of thumb for playing Bethesda games in general,
or XCOM video games in general, AAA's in general.
I guess for me, like Fallout New Vegas came out in 2010. I was probably playing it in 2011, but since then I haven't really had this type of experience, or at least to this level, I guess. But probably really, I mean, maybe at all. I don't know. I mean, I don't play a lot of things that really do environmental storytelling quite as good as Bethesda does. So maybe it just
let me tell you about Super Metroid.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, that would require me going back in the past. Or
getting the SNES Classic.
Oh, well, segue. Just kidding.
I'm just joking.
But yeah, that's how. But yeah, so maybe for me, it's just I haven't had it in a while, and I'm not tired of it or anything.
And
I think a lot of your enjoyment for Fallout 4 does depend on like how ready you are for another one of those games, because it's totally another one of those games.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I'm waiting very impatiently on Elder Scrolls 6, because for as much as you like the Fallout games, Will, I am exactly that way, but with the Elder Scrolls series. So,
Gotcha.
which I know that they're not going to come out with an Elder Scrolls 6 until they close Elder Scrolls Online. So that's going to be sometime around 2035 will probably be the next one. So
Sounds right.
I'm just mentally preparing for that.
I mean,
ATACS episode.
by that time,
20,000.
Skyrim should be out for Android. So maybe,
Oh God.
maybe you can just hop right back in.
I mean, you know what?
They'll make it for VR at that time.
Oh, they
Or
are
AR.
Yeah, AR, right. Yeah, I have a lot of complaints about their recent direction as a company. But I swear to God, if they put out Skyrim on one more thing, I'm just going to lose my shit. Like, stop. Like, that game came out in 2011. Okay, move on to something else. Stop it. But whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we pretty much talked about all the stuff that I've been playing recently, which is Persona 5. But there is one thing I wanted to jump on real quick, which was a demo that I picked up for the Switch, Project Octopath Traveler. That is the working. Right. That is the working title.
Game.
Yeah. So basically, this is the same folks who did Bravely Default. So it's that team over at Square Enix, and the demo for the game is actually relatively long as far as a demo goes. They give you 2 characters to play with, and you play through like little stories with the 2 characters. I've done one of them. I have not done the other one. But even with the like what they show you in the demo, it's not just showing you the battle system and then you get like one combat area, then you fight one boss and that's it. They give you some side quests to do. They show you a lot of the intro story bits for these characters. And the graphics have this really cool kind of like, it's not tilt shift. It's like stuff close to the screen is blurry. But it looks real good. It sounds real good. The combat system is actually very similar to Bravely Default in the sense that you can take multiple turns on a turn and kind of fiddle with the turn mechanics. There's some differences there, but it's not like, if you're familiar with that type of battle system, then this one will not take you very long to figure out.
Right. I was going to ask how standard the battle. I really like the look of the game, and I was going to ask how like standard the battles are. Yeah,
the battles are a little more interesting because each enemy has a weakness, basically, whether it's swords or spears or certain kinds of magic, and every enemy has like shield points. And what you want to do is if an enemy is weak to a spear, you want to hit him with a spear until you deplete his shield points, and then he's stunned. And then you can hit him for large amounts of damage. Or one of the things that you'll find out early in the game is if you keep an enemy stunned by knocking at its shield points, obviously it can't hit you, right? So in order to save your healing items, you just like bop enemies back and forth to try to get it to where they're always stunned. You're never doing a ton of damage, but they can't hit you, so you can basically make it through an entire battle without using any of your consumables or your resources or things like that. So there's some strategy even in the random battles that you would need to use until you outlevel the area, of course. But it makes it pretty interesting. The character that I started out as was the Knight. He can challenge anyone in the game to a duel, like literally anyone. So if you're in town and there's a grandma, you can duel that grandma, and you can get stuff for it. So that's just kind of like one of those little neat features. And it seems like it's gonna be real good. I don't know where it's gonna fit in on like the big flow chart of video games. It's coming out in 2018. I don't know that.
Okay, I was about to ask when it's coming out.
Yeah, I don't think that they've announced an actual release date. I think it's just first quarter 2018 is the last I saw, but even that's not really firm. So it could shift, or it could come out in February. Who knows? But yeah, I think it's if you're a fan of the Bravely Default series of like those kinds of games, this is more Bravely Default and less I Am Setsuna. If you're looking at it that way.
I liked Bravely Default until it started making you replay the entire game multiple times.
Yeah, so that was a problem. But
so that part, I assume, is still to be determined on this one.
Yeah, I don't really get the idea. Like, Bravely Default had a lot of story bits that revolved around alternate universes and stuff like that. I don't really get any of those feelings, at least from what I played from the demo so far.
Right.
This game seems a little bit more traditional in the sense of, look, it's an empire, kill it.
Okay.
So, and I'm sure there'll be twists and turns and stuff like that. But
Classic.
yes, very classic.
Yeah, I would suspect there's going to be at least some twists, but
yeah. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, the demo is actually very substantial, and if anyone is like sort of aching for something to play on their Switch because they're not happy with some of the release schedule, I mean, this demo is free, and you could probably sink a good 5 or 6 hours into it, which is a pretty substantial amount of content for a demo.
Yeah.
Well, that's all that I really wanted to talk about. I'm still playing Star Trek Online, but nothing to say other than I have a giant battleship and I blow a lot of stuff up, and that's fun. Hopefully,
what more does one need in their life?
What more does one need than a giant battleship made of phasers and photon torpedoes? I'll probably end up finishing up Persona by the next time that we meet, hopefully. But yeah, so that's going to wrap up our video game segment. So we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we want to just touch on a couple of news stories. Not going to be a huge news section, but we're going to jump on that, and we're going to do that right after this break. Stay tuned. And we are back. ATACS episode 23. It's time for the news, of which there's a couple of things that we wanted to talk about. The first thing was the voice actor strike is over after like a year. They didn't get everything they wanted. But they're back at work, and that is a really sticky, messy situation that has a lot of implications for a lot of people in a lot of different areas of game development. So we weren't going to talk about that too much because that gets into a lot of things about unions and how labor organizes and how unorganized that the video game market kind of is in terms of what their animators and programmers and graphic designers and marketing people, like, none of those guys are really organized in that way. So we're going to try to avoid most of that. But just a quick FYI. They are back at work, so you should be hearing Nolan North in a video game near you pretty soon.
Yep. It is funny that, for certain series, like, voice actors have had to change for certain characters because of this, but in theory, now they can come back.
In theory, and like I said, this just kind of just jumps into a lot larger questions about, well, if the video game voice actors are getting this, then what about the animators, and then you start to chain into a whole bunch of stuff that eventually falls back into a much bigger discussion than what we really feel like that we have the knowledge to tackle here. So that's more of an FYI.
I'm a big dummy, so.
I mean, Paul, you've had the government shut down on you multiple times, so you're kind of familiar with this type of situation.
Yeah, but the difference with me is I always got back pay, and these guys haven't. So that's
right.
Ish, like I say, ish. But they're back at work, so that's news. Some people say it's good, some people say it's bad. It doesn't really matter. It's just
I like Nolan North.
I like Nolan North a lot, and he's always the option that I pick in every game that I play. So I look forward to the Nolan North voice pack for Horizon Zero Dawn. So the other thing I would, the other thing that we were going to talk about real quick is the SNES Classic launch. They made more of those than what they did when they made the NES Classic. So it seems like that if you want one of these, you can buy it. The pre-orders, I think so. I haven't called my local GameStop because I went to go to my local GameStop to buy one, and then I ended up buying a 2DS XL and 3 video games instead. So I am not good with money and should stay away from those stores. But the prices on eBay are not super skyrocketing like they were with the NES Classic. There seems to be a good amount of supply, and that's good. That means that Nintendo has made good on one of their promises that they were going to make more of these, even still a limited edition run. And it looks like that, at least for the time being, if you are thinking about picking one of those up, you can probably find one.
Yeah, I mean, if I could, they're not available on Amazon right now. If I could just walk into a store and buy one, I totally would, but I'd be kind of surprised if I could actually do that at this point.
Yeah, I've heard various things from like various places, but the fact that they're not $300 on eBay 4 days after it launches,
I definitely get the sense that there were more of them on launch day than there were of the NES one, but they're probably, if I had to hazard a guess, they're probably still sold out at this point.
Yeah, and just to tag along a little bit to that, they being Nintendo has announced that they will also be releasing another run of the NES Classic Edition because they're not very happy with how much money scalpers are making off of that system. So
there was a hilarious release from Reggie that was like, "Hey, don't pay more than $80 for the SNES Classic."
Yep, and people are paying more than $80.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more.
I just punched it into Amazon, and the cheapest you can get one for is about $170.
Yeah, so that's a lot more than 80. Some would say more than double. And Nintendo is planning on another run of those. So if you're interested in tiny consoles and you would like to have them, then it looks like that's going to be something that you can have in the relatively near future. That being said, if you're trying to order one of these for someone for Christmas, don't wait until the last minute. There's probably going to be stock that'll come in and out between now and then, but I'm pretty sure the closer you get to Christmas, the less chance that you'll have of actually snagging one of these off of a shelf or off of Amazon.
And that finally answers the question: what does Nintendo think about the scalpers?
No, they don't.
It turns out years after the fact, they're like, we don't like scalpers. We're going to make more of these.
Yep. Or they just decided that they actually do like money and have just decided to make a lot more. So yeah.
I personally know 3 people who own a SNES Classic.
That's. I don't know anyone that owns a SNES Classic. So you know more than me.
Mm-hmm. Apparently.
So. The other thing that we wanted to talk about was this little beef between a fairly popular game that you might have heard of before called PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. They're a early release game on Steam. They've sold approximately 3 billion copies, and Twitch has been thinking about renaming their service to PlayerUnknown's Twitch stream. It's basically a game where you have a battle royale mode. 100 dudes drop on an island and try to shoot each other, and the last one that's alive wins.
And gets a chicken dinner.
You get a chicken dinner. It's sort of taken the internet by storm, and everyone.
It has ostensibly been the game of this year in terms of just its cachet and the public consciousness and the number of people playing it and all that.
Although it is still technically early access.
Yep.
Which is funny. As a quick aside, I'm sure that there's more than one gaming publication that is redoing what they consider game of the year, like what just counts as a release game just for this game.
Yeah,
and or maybe some games like Dead Cells.
Yeah. So it's not that uncommon to have success duplicated in the gaming industry, and Fortnite is one of these copies where they're basically saying, hey, we like what PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is doing. Let's put it here in our game. So that's kind of normal in terms of, the gaming industry is a copycat industry from, for certain things. Well, the Battlegrounds developer didn't really want to play along with that line and said, hey, we're going to sue you. Which I don't think they've actually sued. I think it's been mostly. Have they?
No, I think at this point all they've done is just call them out and say hey, this is really shady.
Yeah, and I think it's just mostly a lot of, talking right now. But the response from PUBG has been, it's a little unique in the fact that it's like, you yourself based this game off of a work of fiction that I'm sure that you didn't pay royalties for back in Japan. So, like how it comes across as a little bit hypocritical. They've been criticized for that in several spheres. But it's kind of a tough thing to unpack. I mean, on the one hand, you do expect some certain amount of, developers copying and then evolving, on the other hand, a blatant copy is not okay, but this feels more like the Battlegrounds developer trying to keep this entire sort of genre to themselves, which I don't think is realistic.
No, it's not. The other sticky part of this that's worth clarifying up front is that Fortnite is developed by Epic, who makes the Unreal Engine, and Battlegrounds is built on the Unreal Engine. So these two companies are also business partners.
Right. There are some layers to the onion, and some of the reporting on this has been pretty interesting. But yeah, the developer who did PUBG, I think he has done similar style games for like maybe Arma and like a zombie game. So he's done this style of game as like mods for other games before he kind of spun off his own one. So he's done this genre before a couple times. So it's not, even PUBG is not, I think, completely exclusive within this genre. And then, like the relationship between PUBG and Epic kind of adds a bit of a layer. That's the one thing I think that is maybe a bit of a sticking point. Also, Fortnite in general, like its development history, like,
this is the hilarious part to me.
Just how long it's been in development, and I think from what I remember seeing of it, it didn't seem like they had some cool ideas and concepts, but it didn't feel like a great game. So, I mean, if they found something they can grab onto, that's kind of neat, but I guess at the expense of one of their own licensees, maybe not so much. I don't know. And they're free too, right? Fortnite is free to play.
Yeah, I think that's actually really the reason that the Battlegrounds people are getting so been out of shape about this, is because both of these games are early access actually, but Fortnite is a free to play game, and Battlegrounds you still have to pay. I think it's $30 to access the early access version. So I think they probably feel like that Fortnite is just, they pivoted. So like Fortnite has been in development forever, as Ryan said, and like the base Fortnite game is nothing like Battlegrounds. And then like in the wake of Battlegrounds is like amazing success, they pivot like almost seemingly on a dime. I don't know how it takes them like 4 or 5 or whatever years to like barely scrape together this early access version of this game that still seems very incomplete. And then yet somehow within like half a year of Battlegrounds coming out, they pivot and build this Battlegrounds mode in it, this Battle Royale mode. That to me is in itself hilarious. But
that's a lot of bodies being thrown at a project that weren't there the week before.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, these guys are masters of the Unreal Engine. They work at Epic, and like they've been building a third-person shooter, like, and scrapping a bunch of ideas for 5 years now. So like, they're gonna, if they see a good idea and they put themselves to it, like it will not take them long, potentially.
And that's
to make basically a new game mode for their existing, engine or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it is the fact that Fortnite is free to play that rubs the Battlegrounds people the wrong way, because one or both of you already mentioned it. Like, it's unrealistic to not expect people to copy ideas. Like that happens in video games all the time. But I guess it's like the swiftness with which they change direction, and then they're offering this mode for free. And then our business partners, I think all of that just kind of gelled to be like the PUBG guys are just like, hey, yo, what's up with this?
So I'm curious, do you guys, I mean, I have my own opinion on this, which I'm happy to share. Do you guys kind of come down on one side or the other, or I mean, for me personally, I guess I'll just put it out there. Like, I don't see that Fortnite's really done anything super wrong. I mean, I guess we'll see how this develops, but I don't think PUBG is going anywhere. I think the people who have paid for it have already paid for it. To a certain extent, their development, if it's still in early access for so long, like you can almost make an argument that they've been kind of dragging their feet. But I don't see PUBG going anywhere anytime soon. I guess we'll see how it plays out and just how much damage Fortnite really does. I think the PUBG guys might not want to make themselves like look or smell bad in this situation.
Especially not smell bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of following in the same kind of steps. Like PUBG was first, and as long as it can remain best, or maybe not best, but Fortnite would have to come along and completely outclass PUBG, I think, to just really pull those players off of it. I mean, to me, it's sort of like one of those like Battleborn versus Overwatch kind of things. Like I don't remember a whole lot of words coming out of Blizzard about Gearbox making Battleborn.
Blizzard could be that they were. I mean, they were absolutely destroying Battleborn.
Well, and that's just it. Like Blizzard sat down and they're like, we're going to make the best one of these games that we can, and we have confidence that people will come play our game because it's going to be the best one. And
was Battleborn free to play from the start? I forget.
I don't think so. I think Battleborn came out as a full price game that dropped pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, I know it's free to play now, but I can't remember at launch. I think that's maybe the one difference here is that Fortnite is free to play.
Yeah, and like maybe that is enough to get a bunch of people. It's sort of like the Android app economy, right? Like because it's free with microtransactions, a bunch of people are going to jump into it. Maybe that's a legitimate fear, but I still think that given the fact that so much of the gaming industry is based upon taking someone else's idea and trying to make it better, or adding your own twist on top of it. A lot of the stuff coming out of PUBG just kind of rings hollow to me. If they've already established a enormous player base, so just keep on developing inside of your own house and keep on making the best game that you can, and don't worry about what the competition's doing. I mean, how many copycat games for something like a Halo came out when Halo came out, but we don't remember any of those. So just keep making the best game that you can. Don't spend your energy and your time grumbling at Epic.
Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty much in line with what you two guys are saying, I think.
Yeah, I mean, unless Epic somehow just destroys them or blindsides them, which I don't see happening. And I mean, if the competition forces them to develop faster, to release features faster, to, maybe consider cutting their price or doing like a freemium model, like, maybe that's a good thing, selling some like cosmetic pay for items. It could be a good thing for Battlegrounds, like you said, if the developer focuses on making a more competitive product and not about grousing off of.
Right. And I mean, I think that we start to get into a little bit different conversation if Epic starts to change the licensing structure of the Unreal Engine, or if they just refuse to license the Unreal Engine. Like that's a really different sort of like conversation. But so far as we can tell right now, Epic's just adding this game mode to their game, and PUBG's just continuing to develop their game, which is still in early access. So unless there's some sort of a retaliation from Epic in a way that is specifically targeting, the developer of PUBG, I don't really see that they need to really be talking too much. So.
Yeah,
but
since PUBG actually already has some microtransactions in it, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, microtransactions on a game in early access that makes my blood pressure rise. Yeah, that whole thing makes my blood pressure rise, which is one of the reasons why I'm not playing PUBG.
I would say, I would comment, but I guess Overwatch does that as well. You pay a full price, and then you can still buy cosmetic items on top of it, which I don't mind cosmetic items so much, but
And that's what it is in PUBG. It's pretty similar to Overwatch.
Like the upfront cost plus the cosmetic stuff, like that's anyway. No comment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
So
think if PUBG, like if they make, like you were saying, like you both were saying, if they are making, like they were first, if they keep making like the quote unquote best one, then I think they'll be all right. Part of this to me, I almost wonder if it's like, because they've said Brendan, the guy, aka Player Unknown, he's said multiple times that he's completely floored and surprised by like the success of PUBG.
Yeah.
So some of this, I almost wonder if like they just don't really know how to deal with this situation, and if they're like, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how this works either. But like, if there's some way of trying to just cover their bases with this, but I don't actually know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, just hire a public relations firm, hire a lawyer, and do what they say. That's kind of the generic answer to some of this stuff. When you look at them, and it's like, well, I mean, you're right. They probably don't know how to handle this success, but there are people out there that do. And you go and talk to those people and figure out how to best message it, and just ignore it. I mean, that's the other thing.
And something tells me Fortnite will not be the last copycat of this game mode. I would not be surprised if we start seeing battle royale game modes in almost every shooter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting for the next Call of Duty to be announced with a battle royale mode. Like, I really think
Battlefield
it's gonna, I mean, that's going to go everywhere.
Like, who knows?
Because it's a new and innovative game mode that people have seemed to want to see a lot more of, and so the
chicken dinners all around.
Chicken dinners all around. The demand will be satisfied. All right, so that was the only news stories that we were wanting to touch on. There were some other stuff that happened in gaming the last couple of weeks, but we didn't really want to dig into those too much. But as we often do at the end of an episode, we're gonna just take a quick look around, see what people have got coming up on their gaming docket. Ryan, what have you got coming up in the next couple of weeks between now and our next episode?
Well, let's see here. What's most exciting? So I have been playing a game called Tokyo Dark, which is a Kickstarter I backed. It's kind of like an indie adventure visual novel type game. It was a pretty cool style, but it's still pretty early on that. Hoping to get into some more of that. I did also acquire a certain Nintendo Switch last week. So at some point in the near future, sooner or later, I am intending to crack open a certain Breath of the Wild.
All right.
And yeah.
Cook them fairies.
What's that?
Cook them fairies.
Oh, yeah. So other than that, I'll probably still be playing some WoW and maybe doing some Famicom games.
All right. Flex, what about you?
The Persona train will continue rolling.
Right.
I don't actually know how much time I'll have to play in the next 2 weeks, but Persona is still the number one thing. I flirted with the idea of starting Cuphead this weekend, so that may or may not happen in the near future.
All right.
Otherwise, I'm trying my best to wrap up Persona before Mario comes out. The other thing that I would like to get an opinion from you all on is I'm going to be participating in Extra Life on November 4th, which is big streaming for Charity Day. My original plan was to stream the Japanese version of the entirety of Resident Evil 4, aka Biohazard 4. To my dismay, when I actually put in my disc for Biohazard 4 in my PlayStation 4 yesterday and booted it up, I learned that Resident Evil as a franchise has never had Japanese voice acting, ever. Even in the Japanese versions.
Okay.
Wow.
So it's just English voice acting with Japanese subtitles and Japanese menus. That's how they do it.
Nice.
So that kind of took a little bit of the wind out of my sails on that idea. So I could still play through that game because it's an awesome game. But I guess from your guys' opinion, my two ideas are play through Biohazard 4, the entirety of it for Extra Life, or do a grab bag similar to what I did for the Giant Bomb Endurance run. Any thoughts between those two ideas?
I'm kind of leaning towards Biohazard 4. I mean, it's different from what you did last time, so I'm kind of leaning in that direction.
All right.
I'm in the grab bag camp. I think just because I guess it's tough knowing you personally, just because I know that there's so many things that you want to try at any given time. So I almost feel like facilitating that is is good. Also, there's just more of a chance. I think I ended up watching a little bit of something that you did because it was something I was curious about, and I've kind of already seen Resident Evil 4, so I kind of know what the deal is, you know.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I'm just wondering from a viewer perspective.
Both are valid. I do remember
because I would enjoy either.
Yeah, I guess it also depends on what's on your grab bag, because I remember kind of tuning in and watching you play through Momodora. I think I actually watched a big chunk of that run, and that was a game I hadn't seen and ended up being super cool to watch. So if you had some cool like indie sleeper stuff, you might that was one of my favorite parts of your last stream. But Resident Evil 4 also could be easy just for consistency if it ends up your grab bag doesn't look as exciting or interesting.
Are you going to shoot all the little blue discs?
Yeah,
absolutely. That's fun.
I would also do the shooting range minigame.
All right.
Yeah. The grab bag is to be determined. It'd probably be a mix of 2017 games that I haven't gotten to yet. Like I may even start either Prey or Nier Automata or Wolfenstein 2. Like any of those I could start. It'd probably be a combination of that stuff and then digging back into some indie backlog games in the style of Momodora or something, grabbing some games like that. So that part's to be determined if I went that route.
And remind us again when that is happening.
November 4th.
November the 4th.
Saturday, November 4th.
All right, and that is for charity. That is a good cause.
Yep, that'll be to, I forget what it's officially called, but it's towards children's hospitals.
Okay, all right. Yeah, just let us know whatever you plan on doing, and we'll plug it at the next ATACS. Will, what have you got coming up?
I'm probably going to just play Fallout 4 till my heart stops.
All right,
that sounds healthy.
Yeah. Just go ahead and neglect all relationships and self-care activities.
That sounds good.
Other than that, I'm probably going to say, I'd say within the next 2 weeks, I'm probably going to start Divinity Original Sin 2.
Oh, I've heard a lot of good things about that game.
Well, it's a game.
Are you co-oping it?
Yeah, co-oping it with 3 other hombres.
All right. We'll look forward to hearing about that one. As far as for me, I'm still going to keep on keeping on with the Persona train. At some point, I am going to go back to Evo Land 2. I just sort of stopped playing it. I just fell off of it and haven't really gotten back to it. And also picked up Harvest Moon 3D, A New Beginning. And I'm going to see how that works out.
The 2DS collection.
Yes.
Is Evoland the RPG where it progresses through like the history or the evolution of JRPG mechanics? Or
so that was Evoland 1.
Okay.
Evoland 2 seems to be a little bit more. I haven't gotten too far into it, but I feel like it's going to be a game that's going to be about time travel, and when you travel in the future, that gives you like the more modern look of RPGs. Right now, I had traveled to the past, and I went from 16-bit to 8-bit when I traveled back into the past. So I'm thinking that I'm going to try to get back on that train. It's about 20 hours long. It's not a huge game, but for whatever reason, I just put it down and then haven't picked it back up in the last couple of weeks. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. But yeah, so we have been adults. We've been talking about cool stuff. This has been ATACS episode number 23. We're going to go ahead and get out of here, and we will see you guys in about 2 weeks. Until then, happy gaming.